material. Perfect. We are now recording. Thanks for joining us, everybody, both on the team and wherever you are in the world. This is our second quarter PKP development update. The dev team has been extremely busy between a lot of different projects and a lot of kind of heavy lifting on the 3.5 and 3.6 releases. So we've got a lot of material to cover, and we'll touch on a number of different things that are kind of focuses for us right now, highlights. But there's a lot more that we won't have time to get through. So we'll try and refer you to a few other resources you can take a look at. But without further ado, my name is Alex Smetcher. I'm the Associate Director of Development for the Public Knowledge Project. And there's a whole team, both on the Dev Leads group, their names are listed here, and also the wider dev team. Everyone's been working extremely hard, and we'll be showing some of the work that comes from this entire group and the whole dev team. So credit to all of the folks who were involved in these things, not just the one, myself or Eric or Yarda presenting it. We'll begin with a roadmap update on 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and beyond. The big news is that OJS, OMP, and OPS 3.5 are going to be released today. I was hoping to have the packages built and let everyone go scurry over and start downloading those for this meeting. We've got just one or two last things that are needing wrapping up before I can build those packages, but it's looking extremely good. We've been demoing it quite a lot. We've been testing it. We've been doing all sorts of things with it, and it's ready. I know it's been a long wait for that to come out, but the wait is over, and later today, those packages will be available on the website. I'll talk about what this is going to mean for folks who are using 3.3 and 3.4 and all those sorts of things. So not to worry about that. But I think we're going to start off with a bit of a talk about some of the new features. And to demo those, I'll pass over to Yarda first. So Yarda, I'll let you have screen share.
Hello, everyone. Let me set up the screen share first.
And Francesco's asking if we can share the presentation at the end of the meeting. Yes, we will put the video on YouTube, and we're also going to link from there to the presentation notes, so you'll have that as well. Oh, and while I'm talking about this, if you want to use the chat or the Q&A tool, please feel free to drop questions in as we go, and we'll make sure we have some time at the end for us to review those.
Just to check, can you see the screen?
Yep, the screen share is working fine. Go ahead, Yarda.
Excellent. So my name is Yarda Kotešovec. I'm trying to do my best to leading the UI development. And this is actually my first version release I'm involved in, the version 3.5. So it's quite a big deal for me. And yeah, as Alec mentioned, there was so much effort that went to this release. So I basically also wanted to share some of the features to kind of remind what we work on, and for the 3.5 to kind of hype up you for this release as well. So since you can see the screen, I just will go through some of the elements here, which are new. You can see that overall design really changed. So the first striking thing is that we have this new navigation on the left. And one of the, I think, very clever thing that Devika came up with is it's integrating these views inside the navigation itself. So these views basically let you to find the submission you need. You have lots of options just to, see the submissions in the copy editing stage or in, publish state and all these different ones that you might want. And it doesn't take additional space because it's nicely integrated in this navigation. Another nice addition to this screen is that, let's say that I go to this particular view, and you can see that in the URL, it's all like captured in the query parameters, which means that you can easily like bookmark the link and just always get to exactly the list you want. Also, if you apply, for example, some filters, these also will be like added to the URL. So again, it's easy to bookmark, but also to share. If you are like trying to point someone to certain list or certain problem, you can easily do that with this new feature. Another thing that's quite a different compared to 3.3 and 3.4 is that if I log in with the user that maybe is not just doing editor work, but also is contributing as an author, problem before we had that, for example, assigned to me was always like combining everything that was assigned me, no matter if it was assigned to me as an author or as an editor. So now these are differentiated. So if you are in the situation that you are editor, author, or even reviewer, or any of combination of these are now like separated to own dashboard sections. So here as an author, you can see like just the views that are specific for the author, and just the submissions where you are assigned as an author. So that's also a nice addition. Let me see what we have next. Yeah, another. Let's go back here. Another feature that some of you might appreciate quite a bit is deleting incomplete submission. So this is feature if for any reason maybe you are dealing with some spam actors, in your system, and they create lots of incomplete submissions. Now we have this like option to bulk delete incomplete submissions. So with this three dot option, you can select this, and then you can just using the checkboxes, you can decide which one to delete, and just go through this process quite quickly. Now we can then, like, the significant new addition here is the editorial activity. So Devika investigated, what scenarios and what statuses is useful to highlight, on this overview screen. And this is basically to help you understand what submission state is in. So the most significant addition here is the indications of individual review assignments. So you can see how the individual reviewers are doing. And in these pop-ups, you can see, the details, and also you have like the action which you can invoke directly here. It's like a shortcut, so you don't even have to go to the workflow page. You can just do it directly from here. And all these data are pre-fetched, so also it's very quick. It shows in the real time. In this particular case, let me just show you a little bit of the behind the scenes, where in our storybook, where we like have all our like components, but also like this more complex screen. We also use it sometimes for the things that are quite tricky to document and capture, because there is like lots of scenarios, and some of these scenarios are even quite difficult to create. So this is a good example where I'm basically here capturing all the scenarios that might happen in the editorial activity. So all the things that we might want to show to editor, all these scenarios are captured here, which is great, like for documentation purposes. And if we have a discussion about how to like improve it further, we have reference about what we already show on these cases. Okay, let's go inside workflow page. So workflow page moved to the site model. It's completely redesigned. Also new navigation. It same situation with the URL. So everything you pick here, gets captured in the URL. So we can again bookmark or share it quite easily. And there is a couple nice additions as well. So one nice feature, which is a little bit hidden, is minimum reviews. So that's something you need to enable. So if we go to the settings, workflow, review setup, we have now option minimum confirmed reviews required. So for demo purposes, I will pick one, which basically says that my intention is that there should be at least one confirmed review before I can make like editorial decision to move that submission forward. So let me save that. Let refresh. So this gets update it. And let's use maybe this one. So now you can see that it indicates that there is one, you know, confirmed review required. And here you can see that I have a bunch of reviews, but none of them is confirmed. This one is submitted, but still not confirmed. So now what happens if I would decide to accept submission? It warns me that there is not enough reviews that would be confirmed already, and I can override it and just continue and carry on, or I can go back and maybe review what I have done. And here, if I decide to review this one and confirm it, now if I click on accept submission, now it goes further to make that editorial decision without the warning. Let's go back. Also to note that we have a view which is for this purpose, which is needs reviews, and that gives me all the submissions that don't have this, at least at this case, one confirmed review. Okay, let's see. There is. I will now go through a couple of small additions, but I think sometimes the small ones make someone really happy. So let's just go through a couple of them. So in the reviewer manager, which we have here, we have two additions. Both are contributions from Ubiquity Press, which was great collaboration. And one of them is that if we are adding reviewer, we have additional indication about the author, so we know their affiliation and their names, which is good context to make sure that we select the right reviewers. And additionally, if it's detected that the affiliation is the same as with the author, it just shows up as a warning, as a additional context to help pick the right reviewers. So that's one handy feature. Let's go this one. And another handy feature is log response. So this is for use case when reviewers might not necessarily respond through the OJS system, but they just respond to the email, for example, that they accept to do the review. And then this is like helper for editors that they can accept it on their behalf, with this shortcut. Another very small addition compared to 3.4 is just indication that the editor is being recommend only editor. So you probably know this option where the participants is only allowed to recommend. But before it wasn't really obvious in this listing. So this is like small addition, but really helps to get where that's coming from. And a last thing that I wanted to mention on the workflow page is the ability to change the language of the submission after it's submitted. That wasn't possible before. It will take you through the whole process of changing that. All right. And last two things that I wanted to touch on, that obviously we spent lots of time on these two screens, which in many cases are built from scratch. But there were also addition in, for example, in the submission wizard itself. So let me show you two simple additions. Let me find Yeah, maybe this one. So this is submission which is not complete yet, and this is something that can be enabled in the workflow settings as well. And you can that basically gives you extra step where you can suggest reviewers. Um, so imagine that you are also going through the submission process. I already have some of the metadata in. And in the fifth step, there is new option to add reviewer suggestion. And now if I submit that article, I can see this information on the workflow page. So as an editor, I will get this information here. And in the moment when I move it to the review stage, which I can quickly do here, I will be able to add this reviewer directly from the list. Obviously, that's if it's someone who doesn't exist, I have to create like the username for him and finish this process, and he will just become part of that reviewer list. And the last nice thing is if I start creating the submission process, but for some reason I decide not to finish it, that would result normally in incomplete submission. But now we have option to cancel it, which basically removes that submission, which is also quite a nice new feature. Okay, that's all the features I wanted to cover. So I will actually let me maybe go quickly to the slides because this is the uh, topic on the extensibility of these interfaces. That's something I covered in the previous calls quite well. But I just wanted to remind that we also like pushed the limits on the extensibility as well. So there is more places which you can extend where you can like add your new custom UI. But also we improved a lot what you can do. So you can leverage our components from UI library, our composables that are kind of like the helper library to solve like common tasks. And all these things you can quite quickly create the UI that blends very well in the existing UI. So purpose of this slide is share the link. I also created the QR code if you have difficulties to find that presentation. You can just use the QR code to load the documentation which explain how this works, and there is plugin where is like plenty of the examples. And if you come up with some use case that is not covered there, let us know, and I will add that example there as well. Okay, that's all from me. I will pass back to the Alec for the next slides.
Perfect. Thanks, Yarda. And I will start my screen share again, so bear with me a second. We'll have to juggle back and forth a little bit. Looks like I got the right window, hopefully. Okay, so actually, I'm going to come back to this in a second, talk about the roadmap to 3.5.0 LTS. But first, I want to just mention Yarda covered just a ton of stuff there. There's a ton more that we don't have time during this call to cover, but I'll give a special shout out to a few different features. One is the invitation workflow, and this is a generic tool set that's part of OJS, OMP, OPS now that we're applying to subsequent parts of the system. Essentially, it's a chance for us to be able to send out an invitation via email to a user to make a change on their behalf. So previously with OJS, an editor had to create accounts, they had to change roles on behalf of users who would be affected. And that is actually a GDPR problem. So with the CraftOA grant and with TIB, they've been working hard with us to make sure that we have a tool set to be able to replace those GDPR issues with a proper invitation tool set. So this is the first place you'll see it in 3.5, where you can invite a user to take on a role rather than adding it on their behalf as a journal manager. So there's this kind of workflow here where you search for a user, you locate them, and then you send them an invitation to make changes to their account. What this will do is if you want to add a new role to an existing user, for example, is it will give them an email that will lay out for them what the changes are that will be made to their account and allow them to accept or decline those changes. And you'll be seeing this in various places. For 3.5, as I said, there's about 3 different workflows that do get this. There's the role management with users. There is changing your password now gets an invitation to confirm that that change will be okay by your email address. And there's a third one around one-click reviewer access is also now converted to the invitation tool set. So you'll see that in future places. The one that we're targeting for 3.6, again, with TIB's help with the CraftAway grant, is the reviewer invitation process. And that's a big one because currently reviewers, in order to be invited, have to have an account in OJS. And in the future, that will actually become an invitation process where a reviewer will be invited to create their own account. Much better for GDPR. It also will help with some of those workflows where an editor might have an account created for them a reviewer might have an account created for them by an editor with the wrong username or something they don't expect, and that leads often to situations where they've forgotten their username, that sort of thing. So those will get resolved as well. I'll give a shout out as well to another feature that we have in 3.5, which is the JATS XML kind of access area in the workflow. This uses the existing tool set that's now been extended far beyond what it did before to now present a JATS view of the article. And we'll talk a lot more about JATS workflows for 3.6 and beyond, but 3.5 now has this view of the JATS form of the article, minus the body text. That's the big piece. I'll also give a shout out to the ROR integration and multiple affiliations. There's now support in 3.5 for us to be able to use the ROR vocabulary to search for institutions and be able to identify them using that ROR database. You can also still add your affiliations without using the ROR vocabulary. So if you're in a part of the world where there's not good coverage with ROR, that's okay as well. But now we also support multiple affiliations. So even if you don't use ROR, you can have machine readable multiple affiliations if you have multiple institutions that you represent. I'll also mention downloadable reviews. This is another contribution by Ubiquity Press. It's possible to download peer reviews as PDF or as JATS for our XML. And that looks like this in PDF form. This is just a very simple review, so there's not much text here, but it gives you some context for the whole submission that you're working on. And there's also the JATS view of the same thing, basically. This is JATS for R-based recommendations. I think that's all I wanted to give you for a demonstration of 3.5 stuff. There's lots more there. We are releasing videos of these, so check out the PKP YouTube channel, and you'll see some references to these features there as well. Okay, I'll jump back to talking about the roadmap to 3.5.0 LTS. I did mention that 3.5.0 is coming out today for OJS, OMP, and OPS. Those initial releases are not LTS releases. Those are going to become LTS branches within a few months. Basically, we release 3.5.0, we get a few folks using it, we continue to use it ourselves, and then at the moment where we feel like it, particularly the upgrade process has been become a well-trodden path and will be quite reliable, then we'll add the LTS stamp to the 3.5.0 line of releases. We expect that'll happen likely within a few months. We encourage folks to adopt 3.5.0. It is stable. It's been very well tested. We have testing resources now that we've never had before, and that's Bo and also the help of the PKP support team were very helpful on this one. So it is reliable, but what we're targeting with the LTS releases is an indication that the folks who don't have much in the way of tech resources and really won't be able to upgrade on a regular basis will be able to trust it and use it. And that stamp will go on, as I say, within a few months. When that LTS stamp goes on to the 3.5.0 line of releases, it'll begin a 1-year countdown to us declaring end of life for OJS, ONP, OPS 3.3, sorry, and also 3.4. And that means that you'll have essentially a year to be able to take a look at 3.5, plan your upgrade process, train your editors as necessary, and then update to the newest release. And then that'll start the clock on 3.5 LTS being maintained for a period of 3 to 5 years until the next LTS comes out. So we'll be very careful to communicate with all of you about this on the PKP website. So it'll be very clear, like when that stamp goes on there, for example, and you'll have lots of time to do the upgrade. At the end of life, we're not going to stop everything working. You'll be able to keep working with 3.3 if you do for a while, but I would caution folks to really try to make an effort to upgrade to 3.5 for security reasons, for all those sorts of things. Once you get to 3.5 as well, we've done a ton of work on the upgrade process and it'll become a lot easier too. So don't be afraid of upgrades like you have in the past. And we'll try to make sure that those are as reliable as possible for you. Okay, I'll start talking now about OGS, OMP, and OPS 3.6, and we've got some features to present here. And again, I just have to reiterate how busy the dev team has been on this stuff. There's a lot in 3.5 that looks like quite good, and I have to give credit to Yarda and Blessy on the front end, Eric on API stuff, and the rest of the dev team just working very hard to make sure that this is a large feature set done quite reliably and efficiently. But since 3.5 is coming out today, we've actually been working on 3.6 for the last 6+ months, and we'd like to show you some of the features that are going to that as well. And I'll just give a reference here to a number of things here that are not going to be presented today. As you can see, a number of these are third-party developments. We have TIB working on some things. We've got CraftAway project, and that's TIB and also TSV in Finland. There's a lot of stuff that's not on this list. We have a bunch of integrations coming for third-party indexes like Zenodo, and that's through the OSSRE project funded by the European Commission. Continuous publication work is coming. That's almost ready for us to merge, but I won't be demoing it today. And I'll just mention a lot of the work that we're doing right now is in getting a good typesetting workflow for the first time into OGS in particular, but it will also apply to OPS. OMP, we're not sure about typesetting quite yet, but we are talking a lot about that internally. So lots more to show of this in the subsequent presentations that we give. For the moment, I'll pass back to Eric and he'll start talking with us about organizing content with categories. So Eric, over to you.
Thank you. I will share my screen as well. Uh, Thanks so much. Yeah, I'd like to highlight two upcoming features in 3.6, both of which were worked on by Tazlin on the dev team. So I did want to call out his excellent work on this, and I'll give you a little bit of a demo on both of these features. The first of which is organizing content with categories. So previously, the way categories had worked is you had a limit of a main heading and then a subheading. So you could go one level deep. And this work allows it to be arbitrarily nested. So you can go as deep into the tree structure as you would like. So this picture just shows an example of what that looks like with how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 levels deep, but it can go as deep as you need. Another change with this as well is they're no longer reorderable with the ability to arbitrarily nest them. It made more sense to have it be alphabetical rather than reorder because that added a lot of complication and opened up a lot of design questions that kind of get in the way of doing productive work when you're working with categories. Questions like, if you move this here, what do you do with all the other categories? If you delete one, do you delete all the ones underneath it? And kind of a lot of edge cases where it was easiest to use and easiest to make reliable by structuring it this way. And this still has all of the same features it had before, where it can be assigned, each category can be assigned to editors with different roles. You can include a photo and a description, but this is just a bare bones example of what it looks like in the settings. And the browse by sidebar plugin has also been updated, the content block plugin. And this is what it looks like with the same information as I just showed on the previous slide. So it accommodates deeper structures fairly well. Obviously, if you have a lot of very long categories that are deeply nested, it will start to take up a lot of space, but that's kind of an editorial decision where there's no real way to make lots of content that goes deeply nested off the side of the screen look super nice in all cases. So this is kind of the best case compromise where it works and makes it all legible and readable. And those will all link to the category pages, but there's none available in this example. So the second thing that I'd like to show was also done by Tazlin, was using email templates to extend the workflow. So before I give a quick demo of this. The problem this is trying to solve is when you have certain email templates, you can create new custom ones of those as well. And what happened previously was whenever you went to send a different email template, you would have all of the possible options be available, whether they made sense or not. So for example, if you were wanting to send a submission off for copy editing and you wanted to send one of your custom email templates, you would have to sift through all of the possible email templates. And sometimes those may not make sense. It could be something about reviews, it could be something about production, it could be something about communicating with authors. And so what this does is, one, improves the ability to add custom email templates, but also say which user roles will have access to these in which cases. So for this, I will give a brief demonstration of what this looks like and what it looks like for the users who are going to be using it. So if you are unfamiliar, the email templates and where you can change them are under Settings, Workflow, Emails, and here under Manage Emails, we have the Add and Edit templates for all the emails sent by the system. And in this case, for this example, we'll use the discussion copy editing. And we can see here that there are two existing ones, or a default one, then another one. And here's a separate one, a separate demo that I've made, but I'll show you what that looks like as well. You can enter a name. And I don't remember exactly off the top of my head how new all of this is, but this is the email template composition window. So we're able to insert any of the variables and templates that are available. So for example, can find who we're going to be sending this to, insert the usernames of the recipients. And then we can also insert this sender as well. And here is part of the new feature. So mark as unrestricted. That's the default for all the previous ones to make it backwards compatible and make it so that all email templates are available in all cases. But we can also limit the access to specific user groups. And you'll see by default, it is set to unrestricted. But if we want to limit it, we're then able, we get this drop-down list of all the different roles we want to have access to this. So in this case, it's a copy editing discussion email. So for this example, we'll let the journal editor, journal manager, various editors, as well as the copy editor have access to this. Go ahead and save this. And we now see that we have this webinar test template as available. To show you what that looks like, we'll find a submission in the copy editing stage. Go ahead and view that. And we will log in as the copy editor to see what that looks like for the copy editor. So see add a discussion. And now from here, we're now able to select the new template that we've just made. It will pre-fill it. And let's say we want to include the copy editor and the editors there. Go ahead and send that. And we'll see that the email does go through with our content, with the subject, and with the variables that we included in there. So that's what the email template is for extending the workflow looks like. And I will now pass everything back over to Alec to continue on with some of the 3.6 features.
Thanks, Eric. And that's part of a larger feature set that we'll be working on in 3.6 to add task management for the first time to OGS. And again, the problem that we're trying to solve here is this tension between having a really fixed workflow that walks you through the scholarly publishing steps, but also incorporates some flexibility to allow for for journals to define their own workflow. So between this kind of limitation around who can send emails, and then some tools to also broaden the discussion tool set out towards incorporating tasks as well, like let's say ethics checks or plagiarism checks. It'll be possible to still walk through a submission through a fixed logical workflow that serves a scholarly publication audience, but also to add your own little interactions to it, to kick jobs around to different users, to incorporate things that need to be done by one person, like an ethics check, all that sort of thing. Okay, I'm going to give a couple of quick glances through a couple of additional features that are also going into 3.6. The first of these is customizable reviewer responses. Essentially, in OJS and OPS up until now, it's always been a fixed set of responses that reviewers can make to a submission, and that's these 6 different options. But starting with 3.5, there will now be, sorry, 3.6. Starting with 3.6, there will now be in the setup area a chance to customize these. So OJS will continue and OPS will continue to come with these default options for reviewer recommendations. But if you want to add your own recommendations or modify the existing ones, you can do that. We talked a lot in the process of designing this about how to protect the scholarly record. And we decided that it wouldn't be good, for example, to allow for an editor to edit the text of a recommendation once that recommendation had been used. So you can see here that there's these contextual menus to allow for editing and deleting these options only in 3 of these 6 different cases. And that's because revisions required, resubmit for review, decline submission, those 3 have already been used in reviews in this system, and therefore we're not allowing the editor to be able to modify them. These 3 other ones, accept, resubmit, and see comments, those have not been used yet by any reviewer recommendation, and so it's possible still to edit and delete those. It's also possible to deactivate one of the existing items here if you want to preserve it for the scholarly record. Now, let's say in a case here where one's been used, but you don't want to allow it anymore, you'd be able to deactivate it so that it can still be preserved for reviews that have made use of it, and your reports are all still going to be logical, but it's not possible for reviewers to choose it for future reviews. So that allows us to make this customizable, but without destroying the record of reviews that are already made with a particular set of recommendations in mind. So that's coming in 3.6. I'll also give a quick tour through, this is a very long requested feature around controlled vocabulary plugins. Essentially what this means is a chance to restrict metadata to a particular subset of selections. We often have a request for keywords and subjects to be made fixed to a particular controlled vocabulary, but we've struggled with this feature request for a long time because there is no kind of single vocabulary that will suit everyone, depending on, like, regardless of what field they're publishing in. That is permissively licensed, that is possible for us to distribute with OJS without running into licensing troubles, and that also is well translated into various languages. So this has been a frequent feature request, but because of those limitations around the ecosystem, we've just not been able to get to it until now. Essentially what we're doing is we are supporting vocabularies as plugins. And this is an example here where as my demo, I'm going to show the Frascati vocabulary, which is not especially well known, but it is part of our requirements for the Open Research Europe, and so it's the first place that we're adding a plugin. TSV in Finland also has a demo plugin that's based on a bit of a national, I think it's a Swedish national vocabulary set there as well. It's also used in Finland. So what you get in this example here is autocomplete from the vocabulary. You can start typing and you'll get a suggestion that indicates that it's computer information sciences that matches. The identifier in the Frascati vocabulary is 1.2. It's a numeric vocabulary. And the fact is it comes from the Frascati vocabulary. So if you had multiple plugins offering different vocabularies, it would show you which one you were using. Autosuggest isn't especially helpful. So what's coming as well, we're still working on this part of it, is a click and select. You'll be able to open a little window that gives you a list of all the different vocabulary details. And then you can use the checkboxes to select which ones of those that you want. Because these are plugin based, we're still allowing for folks to continue to use the data like they have before. And any data that, let's say you did add a vocabulary plugin and enable it, any data that was still present from the system previous to that being enabled and selected would still be possible to preserve. But for future selections, it would mean that the vocabulary would be defining what was available. Just to give a quick look at the plugin, it's essentially a very short plugin bit of code. There's just a hook registrant that limits you to a particular classification. In this case, the classification comes from an XML file that is part of the plugin. And you can see that right here. That just lists out the different bits of text. We're leaving it up to the plugins to define how they interact. I know that some vocabularies are extremely long, and so it might be that there's a third-party API that allows you for you to choose. They might well have URIs instead of these numerical identifiers. They might require different UI tools to be able to allow for the selection of the content from a larger list, for example. So that all stays up to the plugin, and of course the choice of vocabulary does as well. As with everything else, we're trying to keep this, so GitHub's having trouble, trying to keep this translatable. So there is, for example, I think it's in a pull request here. There is a JSON file that's used in the front end, and this is the English language JSON file. So it would be possible to have different translations of this content here as well, if the vocabulary does support that. Next feature I'll take a look at is journal article versions and preprints in OJS. This is a huge feature, and this actually goes along with another feature I'm not going to demo today, which is almost ready for us to merge into the main branch, which is the mega journal early access continuous publication model version of things. So I'll start with preprints and journal article versions and kind of build up the process for that. So we're taking a lot of our lead here from the journal article versions NISO working group. And this is a standard that they've had a published version for comment, but they've not finalized that yet. They're working hard on it. It's a big subject. They've got a lot of players who are incumbents in the publishing field, and also Mike Nason from PKP is active on that. And so it's a lot of big players in publishing that have different views of what the workflow's kind of life cycle is for an article. And they're trying to bash it into a single vocabulary they can all kind of agree on. The document for public review came out, I think a year, maybe two ago. And essentially it breaks the article lifecycle down into a fairly simple vocabulary. Author's original, submitted manuscript, accepted manuscript, proof, and version of record. And the ones that are most relevant to folks using OJS working with, let's say, a publish, review, curate workflow are going to be the author's original, submitted manuscript, those two as a preprint form, and then version of record as a published journal article in the more traditional sense that OJS has always supported. So I'll show you how this plays out in OJS, but think about it this way. Existing OJS users will be publishing versions of record, but we're going to add the ability to add author's original and submitted manuscript as a preprint form of the article. This terminology is subject to change. I think especially the version of record is a contentious term, so that might be changed before the final version of this standard gets published. And we'll roll with that, of course, as we go. Okay, so going back to the workflow, if you are, let's just see if I've got a submission published. I think I have the screenshots here. Okay, so I first want to motivate how we're using the versioning tool set to incorporate journal article versioning. If you're using OJS and you have versioning on your articles, you'll be used to seeing something like this, where if you have a revision made after the article is published, you'll be able to publish a version 2 essentially, or a version 3. What journal article versioning does is it extends that to include also the concept of a major versus a minor revision. So if you had previously version 1, 2, 3 of your journal article, you can now create a 3.1 for a minor revision or a 4.0 for a major revision. So this indication here, which is probably going to be adjusted a little bit before we release it, now gives you the information about what stage the publication is. These are both versions of record, which means that they're traditional published journal articles, and also the journal article versioning style version numbers, 1.0 and 1.1, to indicate that this second version here was actually a minor revision of the 1.0. So this is essentially taking the existing versioning tools in OJS, incorporating the vocabulary, and adding the ability to make a minor revision, which is new as well. What we've done as well is we've moved the versioning tools to the sidebar. So previously you used to manage the OJS versions kind of up here in this area. And we've moved that now to the sidebar and added this kind of collapsible view. Every version has a complete set of metadata because we don't want to have, let's say you had a typo in your abstract. The abstract belongs to the version, and when you revise that submission, you revise the abstract metadata for the future version. I can probably say that a bit more clearly, but I think you get the point. The submission list, sorry, the contributor list, the title and abstract, all the metadata goes with the versioning. So if you make a revision to the submission, that stuff gets copied across, and you can edit it separately. So the versioning stuff is now on the sidebar here. You can see again, you have your version of record 1.0, your version of record 1.1, and below each one of these, you have your full contributor list, your title and abstract, all that sort of thing. The new addition here is that we are also going to open this up to allow for the designation of different stages and not just the version of record. So to jump back to a submission, I have a brand new submission that's just come in from the author. And when it comes into OJS, it gets here this designation of unassigned version. And what this means is that we have not yet told OJS that this is going to become a published preprint, if you are, sorry, a posted preprint, if you are doing a preprint workflow, or it's going to become a version of record, like a traditional article. So let's say that we've got a publish, review, curate workflow, and we're going to accept this as a preprint and post it. So basically what I've got is I've got the author's original submission file here, some kind of a Word document. I'm going to go through a workflow to create my galleys, and I'll have more to say about this in a minute. And then I'm going to post this without further ado, without going through a peer review. So I'm going to skip the review, record that decision, and I'm just going to go ahead and send to production. And I'm going to post that schedule for publication. This is brand new here. So this allows me to designate now to tell OJS this is a preprint. So I'm going to go to author's original version, and this says that it is not a version of record. It's not a formally peer-reviewed piece of scholarship. I'm going to say this is a major revision because it's the first of those. This is subject to change a little bit. I recognize that the NISO article versioning vocabulary is not going to be super familiar to editors, so we're going to have to do some work in making sure they're guided through this process. So expect this to change a little bit with fields being pre-filled and some helping text to get folks used to it. But my hope is that the journal article versioning standard gets adopted quite broadly and folks do get used to working with it. Okay, so because we don't have yet an early access workflow, we are going to have to currently designate an issue. By the time 3.6 comes out, you'll be able to post this without having an issue designated, because in most cases, a preprint will not be scheduled to an issue. It might only be the finalized version of the article, or a mega journal might not use issues at all. So this is currently necessary, but that will go away. I'll post this. And what we now have is a published form of our author's original. And you can see that this has now become author's original 1.0. So that stage is now visible in the sidebar. If I go to view this, here it is. I'm going to go to, I believe my issue is not, no, there it is right there. Okay, so this is the preprint form of that submission. If we're doing a publish, review, curate, we would now go back to a workflow where the author, let's say, goes through the peer review process, and I won't go through that. I'll just show you at the end of that process what would likely happen, which is that the editor would create a new version and say this will become, we're going to take our metadata from author's original 1.0, but this will now become the version of record. So we're now going from a preprint to a version of record published article, possibly with peer review. Again, it'll be major revision because we're starting at a new stage. And we now have this version of record 1.0. So we have author's original 1.0 and version of record. This is preprint, formally published journal article, possibly with peer reviews. And we can then, again, go ahead and publish this as a version of record. And you can now see here we have the preprint form, author's original, and we have the version of record. And we can have all those different versions in the middle. We can revise each of these if the author comes back and does a revision, all that sort of thing. This is a major shift for us in what we're conceiving of as the submission. Previously, the unit of work was the submission, and it's going to become the publication, which is essentially the revision of this. So you can expect to see this rolled out with considerations for downstream indexing. Obviously, not all indexing tools want to receive preprints, and we'll have to make sure that they only receive versions of record. So you can expect to see all of that get kind of revised as we head towards the 3.6 release. One more thing I want to say about this. Oh yeah, the other piece of this that I'm not ready to demonstrate, but will give you a good hint for what's coming is if I go into the submission workflow, obviously if we're dealing with preprints, we want to have a low labor way to generate the galleys, and this leads us into our production workflows and our text management. There is a send to text editor link here, and this is kind of opening the pathways towards a publication production workflow where we do the typesetting within OJS. And I'm not going to demonstrate this in any detail because it's still extremely kind of early days on that. But we're working with a couple of options for editors. We've just done a proof of concept around the TipTap editor, which is not by any means what we've chosen to work with, but it is ready to hand as a component for us to tinker with. Essentially, what you can expect to see is a body text tab underneath the versioning tools, and it's going to allow for us to edit the text of the submission directly in the software. And as you saw on the earlier thing here, if we're able to take a Word document or an open document or whatever you've got and extract the text from it, it will do the conversion initially for getting that text into a form that we can then edit directly in here. The goal is to allow for easy typesetting without requiring a lot of server-side tools. But for those who are able to run more sophisticated server-side tools, they'll be able to augment this with richer tool set to do that. That's the input side where we take the Word document or the open document and transform it into something we can edit directly here. There's also work on the export side of this, which is to basically populate the body text element in the JATS document with a form that is then archivable and can be part of a JATS-centric workflow if you want to do that, but also to allow for conversion to PDF into HTML using, again, low barrier to access tools that will allow for you to incorporate that workflow and make a good quality HTML, in particular presentation of the article, much more accessible to folks that don't have a tool set to allow for them to do it currently because it's very work intensive. And that'll also open up all sorts of presentation options for us to have the body text present on the article landing page and all those good things that folks often want to ask for. I believe that is all we wanted to cover. We have a few minutes left for questions, so I will stop my screen share. And I'm going to just jump into the chat. I see there's some back and forth going on. I don't know if somebody else has got a question that I can jump onto here. I don't know if Kate, you've been following some of the questions. Do you want to give us a quick taste of what's been on the Q&A?
Sure. So there's a question about hiding language path in URL. The very
I'll jump
first
on that one.
question.
Yeah. That one's actually super important for search indexing. Previously, the language of browsing. So maybe I'll step back for a second. Previously, there was no piece of the URL that told you what language you were browsing. And with 3.5, we're introducing a part of the language path that does say which language you're looking at the website in. So you'll see this /en in the URLs to indicate that you're looking at English or FR for French and so on. Old URLs will continue to work. So if you don't include the language in the path, it will redirect you to the new path with the language in the URL. But we are expecting to make that a necessary part of the system. And the reason for that is because Google and other search engines really need for enough context to be given into the URL that they can index things reliably. And if you are publishing a multilingual journal and that we continue to use a cookie, which is our previous approach for indexing, essentially the search engine would only be able to index the default language and it will never index the other languages. So for those who are publishing multilingual and we really want to make sure that we accommodate multilingual publishing, having the language be part of the URL is absolutely necessary. Now, Google and I know Lox and others, they depend on some knowledge, Google Scholar, I should say, actually. They depend on some knowledge of what an OJS URL looks like. And we don't want to have a situation where those who are publishing multilingual have one form of URL, and those who are publishing single language have a different form of URL. Or where, for example, if you start monolingual and you move to multilingual, where that results in your journal URLs entirely changing. And so we need to go with a single approach, and that is to have the language in the URLs. I know it does make those URLs a little bit longer, but if you browse a lot of websites out there, especially kind of modern multilingual websites, they all have that. It's kind of the standard best approach for that to be present. Kate, do you want to highlight another question?
Sure. I think you can just follow actually the ones that are in the Q&A. I think the more of a discussion's happening in the chat, but the questions are in the Q&A. So the next one is, which I think you may have sort of covered just now, but about disabling the translation for the name field in 3.3 and 3.4.
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't looking at the Q&A. I see it now. Yeah, I think that one came in just when we were starting. We we do want to promote multilingual publishing again, and that does mean that we want to make sure that those fields are available. But we're trying to make sure that we do a better job about how we present them to make sure that they're user friendly for those who want to use them and those who don't want to use them. So we have some designs for improving the translation fields to make sure that they're friendlier, but we do want to have them present. So if you enable a couple of languages for your metadata, it should be possible to enter data in those languages. Now, there is one difference that might be relevant to you in 3.5, which is that we've distinguished between UI languages that the website can be converted into and metadata languages where you want to enter, let's say, journal article titles and abstracts. And the idea for this is that the set of languages that you want the website available in are different than the metadata languages. You might actually want metadata in dead languages like Latin for historical submission, or you might want to have a metadata language available that you don't have currently available in the UI. So it's now possible to designate those lists separately, and that will impact which sorts of names you see. But I think the answer to your question is that we're going to have, at some point, I don't have a firm answer for you on when, but a better tool to allow for the entry of multilingual content, because the current one's a little bit clunky. Okay, next question I have here is, will it be possible to create new automatic reminders? For example, review acceptance reminder before due date. There are a couple of improvements to the reminders in 3.5 already. I don't recall those off the top of my head, but I think the task toolset's going to speak to what you're asking for there, which is going to allow for the creation in journal setup of different templates for tasks. And that's going to allow for you to create a set of tasks that get assigned to a submission when the submission comes in and standardize what workflow a journal article goes through with your own needs. That's going to include the designation of deadlines. So you can create a template in your journal, say I need to do an ethics check on a new submission, and that's going to take up to 2 weeks. And when a new submission comes in, that need for an ethics check gets assigned to it, and then a due date gets assigned as well. So yes, that will come with 3.6. Last question here on OMP 3.5. It's now possible to create section headings, chapters and subchapters. OMP already has a chapter workflow, but we know it's clunky. And we've been doing some work with Zoe, who I believe is here, on better understanding what the needs of OMP users are with respect to chapters. There is one improvement in 3. I even think the most recent release is at 3.4, but certainly 3.5, which is to create chapter landing pages, which means that you can designate your chapters as before, but when you come to browse the published content, there now is a landing page that you can land on when you want to view that chapter. So that piece of it's gotten a little bit better, but we know there's definitely some work to do on chapters. It's probably our most requested feature on OMP, and we're talking right now about how to incorporate those priorities and fund them, basically. So watch for us to have some news on that piece of it. It is high profile, if that is the feature you're looking for. Okay, I see a couple of comments in the chat about typesetting. Yeah, that's a huge, huge feature, and we're really excited to make some steps forward on that. We've had to wrestle with the approach quite hard, and so I'm hoping that as we start to drop those pieces into place and be able to demonstrate them, that they do live up to your expectations and suit the needs. There's a huge gap between our kind of broad, lesser resourced community out there. That's folks who are running on commodity hosting who don't have the chance to run anything complicated server side. And then the folks who are able to run their own Docker containers for more complicated features, that sort of thing. We're trying to make sure that we can accommodate both low barrier to entry publication and also much more kind of high tech publication, and allow for folks to be able to do typesetting regardless of which side of the fence they fall on. That means, for example, that a lo-fi typesetting using the browser for conversion to HTML will be possible for users who don't have a chance to run Docker. And then for those who do, a server-side conversion tool to create your PDF files, for example, from your HTML and CSS will also run. So a big gap there. We'll have to do a lot of work in communicating the ways that those workflows fit together. But technically, we have a good roadmap forward. Okay, I think that's all of the questions we had.
Yes, Eric and Yoda answered a few in the Q&A. So if folks want to review those, there's one in particular, it will just call out about the ability to upgrade directly from 3.3 to 3.5 without going through 3.4. And Eric confirmed that that is something that folks can do. So I'll just call that one out because that might be of interest to folks, but otherwise feel free to review those other answers in the Q&A there.
Yeah, that's an expected workflow. Absolutely. 3.3 LTS to 3.5 LTS will be a very common upgrade pathway. I think we also talked internally. I don't know if we have anything specific to announce, but for those who are going 3.3 to 3.5 from LTS to LTS, I'm also aware that we have good documentation on major upgrades. And so if you look at the 3.4 upgrade documentation, it'll give you a list of what's new since 3.3, and it'll walk your editors through what they need to know. But for those going from 3.3 to 3.5, there is no single document that says, here's everything you need to know. You'd have to look at the 3.4 and 3.5 documentation to kind of take that in two steps. So we are talking internally about how to make that smoother for folks to be able to just pass their editors, for example, through one set of documentation. Watch for our news blog to provide some guidance on that one. We're aware that there's a need for that as well. Okay, I'm going to wrap us up there because I think we've answered all the questions. And I'd like to thank you for those questions and for bearing with us through a very rapid run through a lot of features. There's going to be a lot of material coming out to back this up, documentation, further specifications on some of the work in progress. So again, watch for us to have one more of these in the next quarter, and also watch for a lot of material to come out with the 3.5 release to support folks through that. I'm going to take our team back to our own internal meeting and get us through that promise of getting 3.5.0 out today. So I'm off to the next thing. But thank you very much. And thanks in particular to the dev team for working so hard on all this, the support team for their testing help, the documentation team for getting a ton of work done on this as well. It's been a very much a whole PKP team thing. And when I say PKP team, I also want to include a lot of folks who are in our kind of PKP diaspora, a lot of the different groups that contributed features, the translators for all their work as well. It really is a community effort, and I think we're going to see a very good release come out as a result with a lot of new stuff. So thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon.